Hi Year 12, this will be the last annotation video that we need to do for Rhapsody. We finished off, almost finishing this stanza here with the last one, so let's just reread the stanza before we start. The memory throws up high and dry a crowd of twisted things, a twisted branch upon the beach, eaten smooth and polished as if the world gave up the secret of its skeleton, stiff and white. A broken spring in a factory yard, rust that clings to the form that the strength has left, hard and curled and ready to snap. We'd circled all these examples of sibilants that gives this stanza quite a harsh sound, and the final bit here where we've got rust that clings to the form that the strength has left, we have this idea of something that is no longer strong, so a society that has given up its strength or it's lost its strength, and that there's a pointlessness to it. So a spring was something that was useful and able to to assist or to do something, but now that it's broken and it's rusting, there's no point to it. What we're going to write is, if we underline this, now what this is also giving is this idea of depletion, and so we've got all throughout the poem references to things that are disappearing or fading or depleting or becoming weaker. So we've got the dissolving memory, the strength that's left, and as we go on there are other examples of this kind of image of being reduced. So we're going to first off write depletion, and then the notion of society as having lost its strength, given up and pointless. The hard and curled and ready to snap. It's metaphoric here because it's literally talking about the spring, but metaphorically it's referring to the mindset of the, now I've been saying persona I think, but I think I'm going to also refer to him as our flaneur, because he's definitely this nocturnal flaneur that we have going through the city at night time and making these observations that we that are similar to what we saw in Prufrock. So mindset of the flaneur, or it could be all of society, as tense, ready to snap. Now, another note we're going to make here is around the fact that we've got these images of things being stripped here. So the twisted branch that has been eaten smooth and polished, as if the world gave up the secret of its skeleton. Turn your book to the side like this. We're just going to make the note here and it is that this idea that in the night time there's a stripping away of the facade of morality. You know, that idea of the bad things that happen at night, or people are, I guess, different versions of themselves in the night time when there's that cover of darkness. And so we're going to write night strips away the facade of morality the bare, sinister truth is revealed, and the sibilance that we've already identified contributes to this idea. And we're just going to add a little bit to that here. Actually, we might add it here. And that is that stripped of morality, reduced to sordid desires. So again, that idea of reduction that I spoke about here, so depletion, we've got this reduction of a person into just those base sordid desires. Okay, next stanza. 2:30, the street lamp said, "Remark the cat which flattens itself in the gutter, slips out its tongue and devours a morsel of rancid butter." So the hand of a child, automatic, slipped out and pocketed a toy that was running along the quay. I could see nothing behind that child's eye. I have seen eyes in the street trying to peer through lighted shutters. And a crab one afternoon in a pool, an old crab with barnacles on his back, gripped the end of a stick which I held him. Now, obviously we've got a really clear allusion to Prufrock here with the return of the cat imagery and the crab imagery. So we can put that to begin with. So allusion to Prufrock. And of course we've had that, I think I called it conjuring, memories of Prufrock previously, but here I think it's a lot more explicit. The notion of being reduced that I have just been talking about, we have again here with the cat that flattens itself. So reducing. And the term of, the gutter. So if we think about reducing of morals, and here we can say that the flaneur is in the moral gutter, or maybe not the flaneur, maybe the man who. So if you remember, we previously were talking about the imagery of the prostitute in this previous stanza, and regard the woman who hesitates towards you in the light of the door. And we spoke about who could be, who's this point of view here, and perhaps the street lamp is representative of like a phallic symbol, and that man that is engaging the services of the prostitute. and then speaking critically about her. You know, that threat to men's sense of masculinity in a very changing world. So here, if we think about those ideas, the gutter is the moral gutter for having considered the prostitute. And I think more simplistically, it's also continuing the imagery of urban pollution, because of course all the rubbish is collected into the gutters. Now the cat is flattening itself in the gutter, slips out its tongue and devours a morsel of rancid butter. There's sexual connotations here with slips out its tongue. It's just continuing that imagery of prostitution and desires without morality. So, sexual connotation. And with this idea of the rancid butter, think of it this way. Rancid, something that's rancid obviously means that it's off, that it's, you'd only eat something that was rancid if you were starving, if you were desperate. So in this image, we've got the hunger of the cat has reduced the cat to a low class survival machine. It's like lowered the dignity, I guess, of the cat. And here it's also an allusion to engaging in activities that are without morals, like the hollow men. Now, we've not done the hollow men yet, so that's not going to necessarily make a great deal of sense, but we're going to write it anyway, because when we do the hollow men, that's obviously going to make that link for you. And devouring, there's that idea of desperation with devouring, isn't there? So we put desperation and hunger and again that idea of reduction. So we've got the reducing. Hunger reduces the cat to the low state of simply surviving. So we can link that to a notion of desperation of modern man. And with a different idea, the allusion to engaging in activities that are without morals, like the hollow men. This next little bit, you might remember me mentioning that I think that this is one of the saddest images, certainly in this poem. So the hand of a child, automatic, slipped out and pocketed a toy that was running along the quay. I could see nothing behind that child's eye. So we're going to write a little bit about this. This is a subversion of the Romanticist ideals, once again. In Romanticism, children were seen as being the embodiment of joy and imagination, and that it was kind of one of the first times that the way that children play and imagine and are quite free was to be really treasured and nurtured. And I mean, think about how a little kid can find joy and happiness and playfulness even if everything around them is fairly dire. They don't have that weight of the world on their shoulders and don't really understand the complexities of things, and can find joy in imagination. But here we've got this child that's become automatic, robotic, and even the idea of pocketing a toy that was running along the key, putting that toy away, not playing with the toy, and then with nothing behind the child's eye, we've got this notion of being soulless and not having that inner depth of emotion anymore. So let's underline this bit here. What colour am I going to use? This one. Okay. Actually, no, let's start with automatic, and I'm just going to use the same colour for these because it's all the same piece of imagery. So automatic, we've got lacks playfulness. It also relates to the idea of being in a routine, doing things automatically. I'm just going to see if this focuses any better. I didn't do it earlier. Might not make a difference. I don't know, I think it's better. So that lack of playfulness, the routine, doing things on autopilot, and then nothing behind the child's eye. We've got these. So there's a bit of a lengthy piece of info. We've got subversion of romanticism. The awe and imagination of the child is no more. Traditionally, children are a source of joy. Life and enthusiasm. Here, children are a source of joy. So that idea that when an adult sees a child, there's that that sense of joy or care or protection that we have that instinct to feel for children. But here, this is quite a creepy image. I could see nothing behind that child's eye. It's kind of almost like horror movie stuff. So it takes away that sense of the child as being a source of joy for the adult. Now we're going to write, this is Eliot's greatest indictment of society. Even the children can no longer communicate or hold hope and joy. So indictment of society, meaning it's his accusation of society. He's accusing society of having caused this in the children. Now, the other image this is giving, so I'm just going to put a plus here because it doesn't necessarily remain just with children, but the idea that conscious, to do with the automatic nature of what the child is doing, like being on autopilot, consciousness can be absent while the body continues. We're also going to just identify this ongoing repetition of eyes. We have here, we have the eyes here, and then the eyes are going to be peering. And then when we just turn the page over, and we have just in a moment, winks a feeble eye. So just do that now. Now the eyes, obviously we've got the notion of eyes as being the windows to the soul and the holders of knowledge, and that we get so much information about a person when we look into their eyes. So here we can see nothing behind the child's eye. This is a little bit different though. I have seen eyes in the street, and again we've got this synecdoche, continues throughout. I have seen eyes in the street trying to peer through lighted shutters. Now these eyes are prurient eyes, which means that they are voyeuristic, that they're looking to get pleasure from watching what they should not. So trying to peer through the windows and see private moments. So prurient, it's very late at night and I'm not saying that word again. Prurient eyes are voyeuristic. V-O-Y-E-U-R, sorry. And then we've got, and a crab one afternoon in a pool, an old crab with barnacles on his back, gripped the end of a stick which I held him. So remembering, these are all fragmented bits of memory. So we've got this continued fragmentation of memory. So you know what it's like with memory. You remember one thing and that leads to the memory of something that could be very unrelated. You don't know why your brain goes to that next place. For us, we have got this, very clear, I shouldn't have used the same colour as eyes, this very clear link with the crab in Prufrock, but here the crab is now old. So Prufrock grows old. And that's alluding to the relentlessness of time that was a concern in Prufrock. Now, this last image here gripped the end of a stick which I held him. You know how with, I guess, an animal like a crab, if you place a stick in their claw, they'll grab it just automatically. It's just a reflex. So this is giving us this image of a reflex. Now, it means acting on instinct. However, there's no purpose or benefit to the crab holding onto the stick. It doesn't give the crab anything. They can't do anything with a stick, but they grip it just out of reflex. So the image is of no purpose. The image is of doing something that has no purpose or benefit. Now, so the poem is asking, what is a person if memory and intention are replaced by reflex? So what is a person? What is, because you know, the modernists, it was all about this search for meaning, search for identity. So the question here is, what is a person if memory and intention are replaced by reflex? Now, moving on to the next stanza. Let's read it. We've got 3:30, the lamp sputtered, the lamp muttered in the dark, the lamp hummed. Regarde the moon, la lune n'y garde aucune rancune. I've pronounced that terribly. She winks a feeble eye, she smiles into corners, she smooths the hair of the grass. The moon has lost her memory. A washed out smallpox cracks her face. Her hand twists a paper rose that smells of dust and old cologne. She is alone with all the old nocturnal smells that cross and cross across her brain. The reminiscence comes of sunless dry geraniums and dust in crevices, smells of chestnuts in the streets and female smells in shuttered rooms, and cigarettes in corridors and cocktail smells in bars. Now, I've got a note that I've already written here, so if you turn your book to write this, and it is that, let me get it so you can see it. There we go. Memory is used as a metaphysical representation of truth that has become increasingly blurred and difficult to locate in modern society. So that's just kind of one of those conceptual ideas that is true for the entire poem. So just something to think about. You might want to pause to write that down, because I'm just going to keep going here. Okay, so back to the start of this stanza. Notice that this street lamp here has been reduced to the lamp. So previously it's the street lamp, now we have the lamp. So that notion of being reduced that I mentioned before. So let's just write reduction So reduction from street lamp, no longer have the street. And we've heard this before. We heard before the street lamp muttered, the street lamp stuttered, muttered, stuttered. So this is the, I might just put it here, repetition, and it is giving us that imagery of routine, and it's cyclic. Now, as the street lamp hummed, we get a sense of a lullaby, perhaps. Peaceful lullaby. I'm not actually sure. And this is where the street lamp is now talking about the moon. And regard the moon. Now, this French that I butchered before, it translates to be the moon holds no grudges. So let's write that translation. And we're going to see in a moment that the moon holds no grudges because she's actually lost her memory. But before we get to that bit, we're just going to turn the book to make a note on the side here about the fact that this, again, is a subversion of the Romanticist ideas, that, you know, the moon in Romanticist literature is seen as something very positive, and that the moon illuminates, you know, it gives illuminating light, you know, it's comforting and it lightens the darkness of the night. But here, the moon is linked with the prostitute. There's a parallel here with the prostitute. So we are writing subverts the Romanticist notion of the moon as a positive illuminating light, here it is a prostitute, the fallen woman who winks and smiles and is diseased. So our parallels to the prostitute imagery from before are as follows. So we've got the feeble eye, and we had her, no, actually let's just have a quick look. We had the, okay, so this is where we, in the second stanza, we had this prostitute imagery. We had, regard that woman who hesitates towards you in the light of the door, which opens on her like a grin. You see the border of her dress is torn and stained with sand, and you see the corner of her eye twists like a crooked pin. So we've got the imagery of the eye, the grin of the door, and the yes, so actually those are the two main ones, because we've got the eye, we've got the smile, so she smiles into corners, it alludes to the grin of the door, and then when we've got this washed out smallpox cracks her face, that's that disease imagery that's associated with prostitution as well. So we're just linking those, and we're saying parallels to the prostitute. He mixes up the imagery a little bit though, because there's this image here of where she smooths the hair of the grass, and that's very maternal. It's a you know, that image of caring and smoothing the hair of a child perhaps. So it's a maternal image. Which it's juxtaposing. Which again aligns with what we were talking about with the idea of the motif or the repeated use of twisted, and we'd said that there's this twisted notion of the perceptions of a seductive female who could comfort him in his loneliness and be a whore who could cost him his self-respect. And we talked about how, you know, I guess a woman could be more than one thing, and that confusing ambiguity that's, yeah, apparent for our flaneur here. So let's go to, we're just going to link the moon holds no grudges, and where we've got the eye here, which we've said links to, you know, there's this parallel to the prostitute. It is a feeble eye. So feeble is something that is weak. So here, the eye is without knowledge or power. And for both of these things, it holds no grudges, and it is without knowledge or power because it's lost its memory. So I'm just going to link these two, and we're just saying, actually it's going to make it it's going to put an arrow and say because the moon has lost her memory. Now, the disease imagery, we're going to write a little bit about this. So I've already said we've got that link there to prostitution, but we also, I mean, obviously this is personification of the moon. Okay, now, so the disease imagery could also relate to the industrialized world as being sick and scarred, and this corruption of nature. So the personified moon, forced to witness the sordid nighttime activities, has made her sick and scarred. So there's a couple of different ways that we can consider this. So the personified moon The personified moon, forced to witness the sort of nighttime activities, has become sick and scarred. Smallpox scars are they're quite noticeable scars that someone gets if they have smallpox, and they look like craters, I guess, and so that image of the craters on the moon's surface is what is being used here for the smallpox scars. So we're also writing disease imagery equals the industrialized world as sick and scarred, which in turn leads us to the corruption of the natural world because of industrialization. Right, now, a paper rose is not a real rose, so it is counterfeit beauty. So something that is fake, it's a facade, isn't it? Counterfeit beauty. And we have a few words here in close succession that relate to death, decay, and the idea of being abandoned, that sort of imagery. We've got dust, we've got old, and I guess alone as well. We're thinking about abandoned, and the old nocturnal smells. So these are going to all link to death, decay, abandoned. We have all of this now is olfactory imagery. We've got all this smell imagery, olfactory imagery. So we're going to write about that in a moment. But before we do, this lovely line here, that cross and cross across her brain, and it sounds, it gives a musical sense, and we can talk about the aesthetic beauty of Eliot's poetry in the musicality of the lines, which often completely contradicts the bleak thing that the lines are describing for us. What we have here in terms of our technique, it's something called, and you might not have heard this one before, and it is the diacope. No, it's not diacope. It's oh, my brain. It is. I'm going to say diacope, but I don't think that's right. I'll write it for you, and I'll tell you what it means. The fact that we've got this repetition of cross and cross, across, it's repetition, but we call it, it's diacope, that's it. It's not diacope, diacope. I told you it was late. What time is it? It is, oh gosh, it's 11:45 at night on a Thursday night. So this is diacope, which means when a word is repeated with a small number of intervening words. So if there's just like one or two words in between the repeated words, and that kind of makes it different to like we've got the repetition here of smells, but it's not the same because there's a gap in between the word being repeated, a bigger gap. So the sound of this line, that cross and cross across her brain, it's meant to sound monotonous. It's so we're going to call it monotonous diacope. And what this does is it mimics the sense of routine and now there's a couple of other things we're going to say. So the other thing that we have happening here, of course, is the sibilance of that repeated S sound. So let's just identify this. So here it's quite pronounced because it's the double S that is within these repeated words. All right, so it's doing a couple of things. So the now the sibilance here, it is sinister. Like, you know, sibilance can mean a couple of different things, but often it has got that sinister tone. And what it is doing with that sinister tone is it's subverting a religious illusion. So we've got the religious illusion of cross. So we have the cross that Jesus was crucified on, but also when you make the sign of the cross, that goes across the body. So from the forehead to the chest and then across to each shoulder. So the we're going to write religious illusion. And the sibilance twists it into sounding sinister. And it conjures, I guess, an image of the cliched saying, "a cross to bear." Now, "a cross to bear" means something that you have to endure. It comes from the fact that Jesus had to carry his own cross for his crucifixion through the streets. A public display of shame, but also a really torturous thing to do because it was extremely heavy, and he was carrying it with the knowledge that it was for him to die upon. So lots going on there with that idea of cross. Now I've said a moment ago about the aesthetic beauty of the way the words sound, and it's not just that we've got the cross across her brain, but we've also got some rhyming happening in this section. Look at the way we have rhyming of cologne and alone. Just these little random rhymes, and then we've got comes and geraniums. So if we read this bit together, like all of this together, her hand twists a paper rose that smells of dust and old cologne. She is alone with all the old nocturnal smells that cross and cross across her brain. The reminiscence comes of sunless dry geraniums. So we're going to say that the rhyme with the diacope equals aesthetic musicality. Now, aesthetic is in the rubric for this module. Of course, the geraniums refer back to the madman from earlier who shook the geraniums. And as I mentioned before, we have the repetition of the word smells, and we've got all of this olfactory imagery happening. So what colour can I use? I'm actually going to use a this one. Alright, so we've got the smells here, the smells of dust and old cologne. We have the old nocturnal smells. Then we have the smells of chestnuts in the streets. Then we have the female smells in shuttered rooms and the cocktail smells in bars. We go from smells of chestnuts in the streets, so we're in the streets and that's, a pleasant smell, roasting chestnuts, but then we go inside, we've got the shuttered rooms, the corridors, and the female smells is, that's got that sexual connotation and that allusion back to that prostitute imagery, and the cigarettes and the cocktails that are in the corridors and the bars, so shuttered in. So what we have here is, so let's first put repetition and repetition of smells and it's also, we've got this anaphora of and what all of this is doing is it's creating a flood of olfactory imagery. Now, smell is actually memory's most physical sense. So you know what it's like if you smell something very specific, it that is connected to a memory. It conjures that memory very quickly. So we are writing here, so it's for all of this, a flood of olfactory imagery. the tone becomes both intimate and contaminated. Smell is memory's most physical sense. Here, it doesn't lead to tenderness. It leads to stale interiors and enclosed desire. With the street life smells of the substances needed to survive life, conjuring preludes. Now, what I mean by that is we've got the alcohol and the cigarettes. Like in preludes, there was the alcohol and the cigarettes. The idea of the stimulants needed to survive the monotony of life. So we're saying the repetition of smells and anaphora of and with capital, emphasizing the culmination emphasizing the combination of vivid smells that becomes suffocating. And that notion of enclosed spaces and being trapped, alluding to the idea of being trapped in modernity. Now, this is going to run out of time. These things only go for an hour. There's just a little bit to do. It's not going to take very long on the next video, so please don't give up here. Watch the next one. We've only got a little bit to go, but it's important.